In this video, I show you how to turn a handle to make this spatula, but you'll be able to use a similar process to make handles for many other types of things as well. So coming up, I show everything involved with how to make this handle, along with some bonus content on how to make your own burning wire tool and your own friction polish to give that handle a nice, beautiful finish at the end. Alright, so what I have here is a serving spatula turning kit, which comes with a spatula, a threaded insert, and an Allen wrench. But first, I'll need to find some wood to turn the handle. And I happen to have a really bad habit of never throwing away my wood scraps, so I have this really nice piece of walnut to use for this. And this is 6 inches of hardwood, which should be plenty long enough.
That's what she said!
So now I'm going to cut this down on my table saw to make a smaller blank to turn on my lathe. And I want to point out that I always wear a face shield when I'm dealing with these sorts of power tools, like a table saw or a miter saw, and especially the lathe, because you definitely don't want something to kick back and hit you in the face. So now I'm going to find the center of this blank to get it ready to mount on the lathe. So to mount the blank to my lathe, I'm going to drill a hole for this woodworm screw, which I'll insert into the chuck on the headstock on my lathe. And there are other ways to mount blanks to a lathe, but this is typically the method that I like to use. So I just want to take a moment to let you guys know that I really appreciate it when you hit that thanks button that sits beneath the video. That really helps support the channel. Another great way to help out the channel is simply just liking the video and subscribing. That helps out quite a bit, and I really do appreciate it. If you're really interested in supporting the channel even further, I did enable channel memberships. So there are 3 levels: the enthusiast, the hobbyist, and the weekend warrior. And there's different perks associated with each level. So if you're interested in learning more about that, I did leave some more information in the description of the video. So now that the blank is mounted, I'm going to turn it to round so that it's nice and balanced on the lathe. So the spatula that comes with this kit is designed to just screw into the handle, so you can remove it to clean it anytime you want. And it also comes with this threaded insert, which I'm not going to use, and I'll show you why in a minute. But I have these other threaded inserts that have 1/4 internal threads, which is the same as the threaded insert that comes with the kit. So I'll just test this out and see if it works okay. So now I'm going to set the depth on the drill bit and then drill a hole for the threaded insert using my lathe. So I actually bought 2 of these kits because I'm giving these spatulas away as gifts, and I already turned a handle for one of the spatulas, and when I tried to thread in the threaded insert that came with the kit, things didn't go so well, and the metal actually split. You can see there at the top. And that happened when I tried to thread it in using the Allen wrench that came with the kit. And that's why I decided to use these threaded inserts instead. Alright, so now I'm going to swap out this tailstock center for a drill chuck and get a hole drilled for the threaded insert. Now I'm just going to check to see if I drilled it deep enough, and it looks like I did, so we're good there. So this is still too big around, so I'm going to keep working on it until it feels comfortable in my hand. Alright, so that feels pretty good now. So the next thing I'm going to do is use calipers to measure the diameter of the spatula where it meets the handle. And then on the end of the handle, I'll make it have roughly the same diameter, but just a little bit bigger. That way, when I go to sand at the end, I don't end up removing too much material. So the calipers fit over it now, but I have to force it a little bit, which means it's slightly bigger than what it needs to be, and I'll just check it to see how close I am. Now, it's time for the fun part, shaping the handle. And I just have a rough idea in my head of how I want the handle to look at the end, so I'm just going to kind of wing it until I think it looks right. So if you're wondering what to do with all this extra sawdust, I have another video that shows how to turn sawdust into fire starters, and a link should be popping up right about now. And I'll also put a link in the description. So there's one design element that I've always wanted to try, which is adding burn lines. I've just never made the time to actually give it a try. One problem is I don't have a burning wire tool. But this time, I decided to add some grooves, and I'm going to make a burning wire tool. And I've never made a burning wire tool before, and I've never made burn lines before. So let's see how this turns out. Just in case you don't already know, here's a little trick to find the center of a circular blank. And there are different ways to find the center, but I found this to be pretty easy. Alright, so now I'm going to remove the spatula handle just for a minute and make a couple handles for the burning wire tool. And again, I just have a rough idea in my head of how I want the handles for the burning wire tool to look. So I'm pretty much just going to wing it until things look and feel right. Now I'm just going to use the calipers just to make sure both ends are roughly the same so the handle looks somewhat symmetrical. Alright, so now I'm going to pre-drill a hole for an eye screw, and this is what the wire is going to attach to. So now it's time to sand, and I'm going to use 320, 400, and 600 grit sandpaper in that order, and then I'll grab a handful of sawdust and smooth and polish the surface. And I decided not to use any finish on these handles because I didn't really care all that much. At the end of the day, this is just going to be another tool I use for the lathe. So now I need to make a duplicate handle, and I decided to show this process just so you can see what I do to duplicate a part. So you might be wondering what kind of wire I'm going to use for this. And I was actually wondering the same thing too, because like I said, I've never made one of these before. So I was thinking about maybe going out and buying a spool of wire, but then I remembered I have a few guitars laying around because I've been playing guitar since I was 11 or 12 years old. And I have a guitar that has some really old strings on it that are worn out. So I thought, well, I'll just steal a few strings from that. So I decided to remove a few strings because I wasn't sure which one would work the best, and I wanted to have a couple extra handy just in case I needed to swap one out. and I just poked a hole in my finger. You would think I would hurt myself on the lathe, but apparently guitars are far more dangerous than lathes. Alright, so this looks like a burning wire tool. So let's get the handle mounted back on the lathe and see if this thing works. Okay, here we go. And it's working. And I also let the magic smoke out. Now it's time to sand the handle, and I'll do it the same way that I did earlier. So once I'm done sanding, I'm going to apply a finish, and that's where the handle's really going to come to life. And I actually use a homemade friction polish, and coming up here in a minute, I'll show you how that's made. So to make your own friction polish and to save yourself some money in the long run, all you need to do is mix together equal amounts of boiled linseed oil, denatured alcohol, and some shellac, and give it a good shake at the end, and you have some friction polish. There are friction polishes you can buy, but I found that they're pretty expensive for the amount that you get, and I actually have some friction polish that I've bought, and I'll show that here at the end, just in case you want to buy it instead of make it. But I've been pretty happy with the homemade friction polish. So if you're more comfortable with buying friction polish instead of making it yourself, there's one brand that I have that works great, and it's called Shella Wax, but it's hella expensive. You can look it up and you can decide for yourself which way you want to go. But for this handle though, I'm going to use this homemade friction polish. So let's get this handle looking really nice.
Really nice.
Okay, so now it's time to get this handle removed, and the next thing that we need to do is get the threaded insert inserted. So one tip with getting the threaded insert to go in a little easier is using some finishing wax. And I'll just rub that over the outside of the threaded insert. So you can screw in a threaded insert by hand or with a drill, but just a little tip, I would suggest that you start by hand first to make sure that the threaded insert goes in correctly, because it can still go off into some weird angles even though you have a hole pre-drilled. So I would screw it in by hand as much as you can, and then you can finish it off with a drill. So it still looks like it's not sitting flush, so I'm going to hit it just one more time. Alright, so now I'm going to screw in the spatula and we can see how things are looking. So I think this turned out pretty nice, but there's one last thing that I want to try, which is buffing the handle. So I actually bought a lathe buffing system, and I only briefly tried it once just to see how things worked. So I'm going to get things cleaned up a bit, and let's get the handle buffed. So like I mentioned before, I haven't really used this yet to really buff something for real, and I'm not quite sure if I'm doing everything correctly. So if you see me doing something that's not right, just let me know in the comments below. Well, looks like we're all done here, and I'm pretty happy with the way that it turned out. If you're looking for some easy gift ideas, these make great gifts. Well, thanks for stopping by and sticking around till the end. And if you're looking for ways to support the channel, please feel free to like and subscribe. And if you're interested, please check out the channel memberships. Thanks and take care.